The screen went black for just a second, and that second changed everything. Because when the official police statement finally dropped, many thought the mystery surrounding Yu Menglong was finally coming to an end. But instead of closing the case, it opened a storm. If you've been following this saga, brace yourself, because in today's deep dive, we're putting the police statement side by side with the so-called new evidence that has fans questioning everything. By the time you finish this video, you'll clearly understand where the biggest contradictions lie, what supporters are noticing that others missed, and why the shadow of September 11th, 2025 still refuses to fade. Stay with me, because what unfolds next is not just emotional, it's deeply unsettling. When the initial police report was released, the tone was calm, procedural, almost clinical. Authorities outlined their findings, presenting what they described as the most accurate reconstruction of events leading up to that heartbreaking day in September. On paper, the timeline looked straightforward. Too straightforward, at least according to many fans. Within hours of the statement going public, online communities began dissecting every line. Not casually reading, dissecting. Screenshots were zoomed in. Timestamps were compared. Translations were cross-checked. And that's when the first wave of doubt began. Because while the official version painted a clear sequence of events, internet investigators quickly started pointing out details they believed didn't fully align with earlier reports and circulating rumors. Now, it's very important to be clear, much of what is being discussed online remains unverified speculation. But the intensity of the reaction shows just how emotionally invested the fandom still is. One of the biggest talking points revolves around timing. According to the police summary, key movements and activities in the days before September 11th, 2025 followed a predictable pattern. But fans who had been tracking public appearances claim there may be small gaps, moments where the public schedule and the official narrative don't perfectly overlap. Individually, these gaps might mean nothing. But together, they became fuel. Fuel for threads. Fuel for theory videos. Fuel for a wave of renewed attention that nobody expected to resurface this strongly months later. What truly sent shockwaves through the community, however, was the emergence of what some online users are calling new evidence. Not officially confirmed. Not formally authenticated. But widely circulated enough to spark serious debate. This so-called evidence reportedly includes alleged timeline comparisons, resurfaced clips, and claims about behind-the-scenes activity in the weeks leading up to the tragedy. And here's where the tension really builds. Because while the police statement suggests a contained and clearly understood sequence of events, many fans believe the broader context still feels incomplete. The emotional temperature online shifted almost overnight. At first, people were grieving. Now, many are questioning. You could see it in the comment sections across platforms. Supporters weren't just posting heartbroken messages anymore, they were asking detailed, pointed questions. Why did certain online posts disappear when they did? Why do some supporters believe his public demeanor changed in the months before September 2025? And perhaps the most repeated question of all. Is the full story really known? Again, there is currently no verified public evidence contradicting the official findings. But in the digital age, perception moves fast, and once uncertainty enters the conversation, it spreads quickly. One particularly viral discussion focused on body language analysis from past interviews. Some viewers now claim they see signs of stress that went unnoticed at the time. Others strongly disagree. They argue that hindsight can distort perception, that once people expect to see warning signs, the human brain often finds patterns that may not have meant anything originally. Both sides have been loud. Both sides have been emotional. And the debate shows no signs of slowing down. Another layer that keeps resurfacing is the question of information flow. Fans have repeatedly pointed out how quickly certain discussions were moderated or removed across different platforms. Now, moderation happens for many routine reasons online. But for some followers, the timing of those removals only deepened the sense that something about the narrative still feels unresolved. Whether that feeling is based on concrete gaps or simply the natural grief process of a devoted fandom remains an open question. What cannot be denied is the emotional impact September 11th, 2025 continues to carry. For many supporters, that date is frozen in time. A moment when shock turned into heartbreak. And now, for some, heartbreak has slowly evolved into quiet suspicion. You can almost feel the shift in tone across fan spaces. Early posts were filled with mourning edits and tribute videos. Recent discussions, however, are more analytical: timelines, comparisons, side-by-side breakdowns. It's no longer just about what happened. It's about whether everything that happened has been fully explained. Meanwhile, others within the community are urging caution. They warn against jumping to conclusions based on incomplete or unverified material. And that tension between questioning and caution is exactly what makes this saga so emotionally charged. Because at its core, this isn't just a mystery story. It's about trust. Trust in official narratives. Trust in what fans believe they observed over the years. Trust in whether closure has truly been reached. As the conversation continues to evolve, one thing is becoming increasingly clear: the story's second wave of attention is being driven less by new confirmed facts and more by the powerful combination of grief, loyalty, and unanswered feelings. And in fandom culture, that combination can be incredibly strong. There is also a growing push among supporters calling for greater transparency, not necessarily because they believe wrongdoing occurred, but because they want clarity that puts lingering doubts to rest. Whether any additional official updates will emerge remains unknown. But what is certain is this: the legacy of September 11, 2025 is still unfolding in real time across the internet. And every new discussion thread proves the same thing: the conversation is far from over. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to hear directly from you. After comparing the police statement and the so-called new evidence, where do you stand? Do you believe the official timeline fully explains what happened, or do you think there are still unanswered questions lingering beneath the surface? What detail from this saga caught your attention the most? The silence after the police statement wasn't peaceful, it was heavy. You could almost feel it through the screen. Because when authorities released their official version of events surrounding Yu Menglong, many expected closure. They expected the noise to fade, the rumors to slow, the questions to finally settle. But the opposite happened. Instead of calming the storm, the statement sparked a second wave of intense scrutiny, and that's exactly where part one of this saga takes a darker, more complicated turn. Online forums that had been quiet suddenly lit up again. Old clips resurfaced. Screenshots from past interviews began circulating. Fans who had once been mourning quietly were now leaning forward, re-examining every detail with almost forensic intensity. Because something about the official narrative felt too clean to some observers. Again, it must be said clearly, there has been no confirmed public evidence that contradicts the authorities' findings. But in the world of devoted fandoms and viral speculation, perception can be just as powerful as proof. And perception was shifting fast. The first spark came from timeline watchers, the fans who meticulously track appearances, posts, and movements of their favorite stars. Within hours of the statement's release, several users began posting side-by-side comparisons between the official sequence and publicly known activities from the weeks leading up to September 11, 2025. Individually, the differences looked small, almost insignificant. But when compiled into long threads filled with timestamps and highlighted moments, the effect was chilling enough to grab attention across multiple platforms. One viral post simply read, "Something still doesn't add up." That single sentence spread like wildfire. Soon, reaction videos began appearing. Comment sections filled with long paragraphs of speculation. Some viewers insisted the official explanation made complete sense. Others argued that certain emotional and behavioral changes seen in past footage deserved a closer look. What made the situation even more intense was the emotional tone of these discussions. This wasn't casual gossip. This was personal. For years, fans had followed Yu Menglong's career closely, watching his interviews, his variety show moments, his quiet smiles during press events. So when people revisited those older clips with fresh eyes, many claimed they noticed subtle shifts they hadn't paid attention to before. Was he more tired in late appearances? Did his body language seem more guarded? Or was this simply hindsight reshaping memory? That question became one of the biggest dividing lines in the community. Supporters urging caution warned that human psychology often creates patterns after tragedy. Once people believe something must have been wrong, the brain naturally starts connecting dots even when those dots may have been completely ordinary at the time. But others weren't convinced. They pointed to specific moments, pauses in interviews, quieter than usual responses, brief flashes of what they interpreted as stress. Again, none of this has been verified as evidence of anything unusual. Yet the emotional weight behind these observations kept the conversation alive. Then came another development that quietly intensified the speculation. Several fans began noting how quickly certain discussions were moderated or removed across different online spaces. Now, content moderation happens for many routine reasons: platform rules, copyright issues, rumor control, but the timing caught the attention of eagle-eyed followers. Screenshots of removed posts began circulating alongside captions like, "Why is this being taken down so fast? Are we missing something?" The truth is, there could be many normal explanations. But in a community already filled with grief and lingering questions, even routine moderation started to feel suspicious to some observers. And that's how part one of this saga transformed from mourning into investigation mode. Meanwhile, another layer of discussion began forming around the emotional timeline in the months before September 11, 2025. Longtime followers started revisiting public appearances from earlier that year, analyzing tone, energy, and even microexpressions. Some viewers insisted they saw nothing unusual at all. Others claimed the difference was subtle but noticeable. This split reaction only deepened the mystery. Because when half the audience sees normalcy and the other half senses something hidden, the debate doesn't fade, it intensifies. What's particularly fascinating is how quickly the narrative evolved online. In the early days after the tragedy, the focus was almost entirely on grief and tribute. Fan edits flooded social media. Emotional montages dominated timelines. But now, the tone feels different. More analytical. More cautious. More questioning. It's as if the fandom has collectively moved from heartbreak into what many are calling the second phase, the search for complete understanding. And this is where the psychological tension of part one becomes impossible to ignore. Because at its core, this isn't just about facts. It's about emotional closure. Many supporters simply want reassurance that nothing was overlooked, that the official explanation truly captures the full picture of what happened. Others feel strongly that continuing to speculate risks spreading misinformation and reopening wounds that may never fully heal. Both perspectives come from a place of deep investment. Both sides believe they are protecting Yu Menglong's legacy in their own way. And that emotional collision is exactly why this case continues to trend months after September 11, 2025. Another moment that reignited discussion was the resurfacing of older behind-the-scenes clips. These weren't new recordings, they had existed quietly online for years. But placed into today's context, they suddenly carried new emotional weight for viewers. In one widely shared clip, fans pointed to what they described as a brief but noticeable shift in mood during a public event. Some saw it as ordinary fatigue. Others saw it as something more. Again, interpretation, not confirmation. But in the digital age, interpretation spreads fast. Perhaps the most powerful force keeping this story alive is the sheer dedication of the fan community. Unlike casual celebrity news cycles that fade within days, this situation involves a deeply loyal global fanbase that continues to analyze, archive, and revisit every available detail. And when a community that passionate starts asking questions, the conversation rarely disappears quietly. Still, it's important to ground ourselves in what is officially known versus what remains speculation. As of now, authorities have not publicly revised their original findings. No confirmed contradictory evidence has been released through official channels. Yet emotionally, for many followers, the feeling of unfinished understanding remains very real. And feelings, especially in fandom culture, can be incredibly powerful drivers of ongoing attention. As part one continues to unfold across online spaces, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. This story is no longer just about what happened on September 11, 2025. It's about whether the emotional questions surrounding that day will ever fully settle. And judging by the intensity of current discussions, we may still be far from the final chapter. Now I want to hear from you. After everything we've broken down in this Part 1 deep dive, what's your honest take? Do you think the official police statement fully explains the situation? Or do you feel there are still small details that deserve more clarity? Which moment or observation in today's discussion stood out to you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective matters, and I read every single one. If you found this breakdown insightful and gripping, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next update in this unfolding saga. Stay sharp, because this story may not be finished yet.